Welcome back to Friar Talk, everybody. It has been quite a while since we talked about the Padres, quite a while since we went live and stuff. Obviously, the offseason was very, very slow. Not much happened up until really like a week ago when Pivetta signed. I want to say like maybe up until a week ago. Now we've seen a few Padres moves. That was kind of like their only true like big time offseason move. We've seen them make a couple, minor stuff here. Last time we were actually talking about, last time we went live, it was when basically stuff came out about ownership. There was some trade rumors, and really nothing had happened. Like we were just like, okay, this team isn't spending any money. It doesn't sound like they're going to spend any money. Got to the point where it's like, okay, I think it was Kevin Acee said basically something along the lines of, hey, the Padres aren't going to spend any money. They're not signing anyone. Literally the next morning, they go and sign someone. They signed Nick Pivetta, right? So that's basically the big move this offseason. So we'll talk about him in a second here. It did happen, the move happened a little while ago. Outside of that, I mean, like there's really not many moves. I mean, I'm taking a look right here. They signed him. They signed Kyle Hart. They also, I guess, they did figure out left field. The Jason Hayward, Connor Joe platoon. We'll talk about that too. And then today they signed Gurriel, which I don't think he's even going to make the roster, to be honest. I really don't. But we'll get into that. I mean, I guess that's kind of all we're talking about. I think in terms of like transaction stuff. But what I eventually want to talk about with you, Isaac, because I think it's like, all right, now the season's starting up. I think it's the spring training starts on Thursday or Friday this week, like super soon. I remember I was looking at stuff like saying, hey, which games am I going to go to this year and stuff. I was like, wait, spring training is already about to start. This is crazy. So spring training is literally starting this week, which is super, super exciting. And now it's time to start getting pumped about baseball. I know obviously in terms of like the last couple off seasons, if you're the Padres side, it's like, yeah, it's been tough seeing like basically like the NL, like where a couple years ago when you have Juan Soto and stuff, it seems like the Padres were like the favorites for a year, and now it's definitely died down. But after we talk about the transactions this year, this offseason, in the past couple weeks, I think it's important to talk about like, I don't know why people like don't have the assumption that this Padre team is going to be good. This is a good Padre team. They're virtually running back the same roster right now. If they don't trade Dylan Cease, which because that seems like that might be a thing, it seems like it's definitely a possibility at least. But let's get into transactions first, dude. Like, what's your overall thoughts with this offseason? It sounds weird, but I almost feel like they did more than I thought they were gonna do. Like after the first little bit, but I don't know how you feeling, dude. Because I don't really hate it. Like I know a lot of people hate it, but I think we also have to realize that like the Padres are still deep into the luxury tax. A lot of salary is going to be gone next year, but as of right now, they're very deep into the luxury tax. So they did sign a starting pitcher, and I think that is like the one thing that they needed to do. But Isaac, what's your overall takeaway, man, with the moves in the last couple weeks?
I think everyone's kind of they're just frustrated because it's not the flashy off seasons that the Padres. Sorry if I sound like shit. I couldn't find my mic. But it's not the flashy moves that the Padres that us fans have been accustomed to. Where a few years ago they signed or they trade for Blake Snell, they trade for Yu Darvish, signed Joe Musgrove. Even last year, going into the season, they got Dylan Cease, they got Arise not that long after. So they're making some flashy moves. Um, Now, you kind of have to settle with Nick Pivetta and Jason Hayward, Yuli Gurriel, Kyle Hart, guys that we don't really know much about. Um, Jason Hayward last year, I think he was with the Dodgers at first, but after he left the Dodgers, he went to Houston, had a 756 OPS. So I guess there's a little bit of hope there. It's not much. Him and Connor Joe in the platoon isn't horrible. You're kind of just hoping you get some of the production you got from Jurickson Profar in left field. Um, Nick Pivetta, I don't know if you guys know much about him. I think he's a good signing. He had an expected ERA of 3.51 last year with the Boston Red Sox. 5-pitch mix. I believe it's a fastball, cutter, sweeper, curveball, and a slider. So he's got a good pitch mix. He doesn't throw very hard. He's not a flamethrower, but he kind of reminds me of the archetypes such as like Joe Musgrove, Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha, guys that Ruben Yebles had a lot of success with before, and I think he's going to have a lot of success with Pivetta as well. It's a 4-year deal, but a player opt out after 2026 is possible, and after 2027. So he has two options to opt out. But overall, I think he's a good ball player. Yuli Gurriel is a confusing one, man, because we all know what happened between him and Yu Darvish. But not only that, the dude freaking sucks, bro. It's just like, why are you going to waste money on someone that's $1.5 million that can go towards something else? In my opinion, I don't think he's going to make the roster either. I don't think he's a good baseball player anymore. He's 40. I don't see how, even though it's such a cheap contract, I don't see how it benefits the Padres in any way, shape, or form. Um, Overall, though, I mean, it's a little more than I expected them to do. I honestly didn't expect them to do much, but you still got to hope AJ Preller on, exploring the trade market, trying to see what he can get before the season starts. Because honestly, I think a lot of people are down on the Padres because of the moves the Dodgers have made, not necessarily because of things the Padres have done or who the Padres haven't gotten. Now, of course, look, the heavy favorites for the World Series is going to be the Dodgers. It's obvious. They have a great team. That's probably one of, if not the best rotation I've ever seen. It's stacked, man. It's hard to deny. That is a stacked baseball team. It's a stacked roster, but the Padres are still a good team. You know, Manny Machado's going to be entering the season healthy. Fernando, you got all your guys, all your main guys coming back outside of Joe Musgrove, who got hurt, and Jurickson Profar. But, the Padres are going to, I still think they're going to be a good baseball team. So I know it's kind of bleak because of the moves the Dodgers have made, but it's not like the past years where you have to play the Dodgers 20 plus times. You don't. You only have to play them, I think it's like 10 to 12 times. The rest of it, you're playing teams that really aren't that much better, if better at all, than the Padres. So, of course, the only time you have to worry about the Dodgers is in the playoffs, but we'll worry about them then. Other than that, still a good team. I think they're only a pitcher or two bats, not both. I think they're only a pitcher or two bats away from being a 90 win team again. I don't think they're that bad, man. A 90 win team essentially gets you fourth or fifth seed, whatever it is. And again, you're hoping that Preller's exploring the trade market because it doesn't seem like the Padres got a lot of money to work with. So again, I do still think this is a good team. I do still think that there's a lot to look forward to. And yeah, that's about all I got on what I think right now.
Yeah, dude. And so I want to talk about like the overall, like, just like what 2025 looks like and stuff like that. But beforehand, I do think I want to bring up and see if I have it here. Yeah, here we go. I'll share my screen real quick. Hopefully my computer doesn't trip out. But look, Nick Pivetta, this is a big move, right? I think you agree. I think everyone agrees. This is the big move. You're looking at how it's different this year. You have Pivetta in as your fourth starter. Last year you had Musgrove. I also feel, I don't know. It was kind of different last year because you had Musgrove, but he was hurt a bunch. Darvish was not hurt, but he was out like all year. So honestly, you could make the argument that the Padres have more pitching heading into this season. Obviously, this is baseball. You're not expecting all your pitchers to stay healthy. Knock on wood, right there. But you're looking at it and you go, okay, Pavetta's pretty solid. And if we look at his contract, because you brought it up a little bit, it's a 4-year deal. His deal's a 2-year deal. And if he plays well on the Padres, and to be honest, if he does what I think both of us are kind of expecting, he'll probably opt out after that year because he has 2 years left. Maybe he can get a similar money for the last few years and end his career with one more contract that's a little bit longer, a little bit more lucrative. That's what I'd expect to happen if he pitches well. I think that's what it looks like. This year, he's not making very much money. I think it's a $3 million signing bonus and $1 million in actual salary this year. And then next year, I think it's like 17 or 18, something like that, right? And then there's a likely opt-out after that. You brought up Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo. It does really have that feel. And the thing is like, you look at these numbers, it's not like anything's crazy, but I think it's important there's a couple things to note, right? This is same thing we talked about when we talked about Xander Bogaerts of like, yeah, it's Fenway. Okay, well vice versa right here. Yeah, bro, it's Fenway. So he had an expected 3.51 ERA last year. He has a really good fastball, not necessarily like super, super fast, but good movement, a lot of strikeouts. Like, here we go. Here it is. There's numbers right here. Last 3 years, over 170 strikeouts a pop. And I know that doesn't like necessarily show like, oh, how great a guy is. What it does show is that he's generating swings and misses, which I think is really important. So that's one thing. He's also coming to Petco, one of the most, if not the very most pitcher-friendly park in the MLB. He has a great pitching coach here. He's not signed to some crazy lucrative deal. He's not getting the Padres in a spot where it's like, okay, now they can't sign Michael King anymore. He's not getting them into a spot like that, because I think that's what most people want to see for next offseason. It's like, I think the number one priority is very clearly like, we want Michael King back, right? I think that's going to be across the board. Maybe if Jackson Merrill plays well, it's like Jackson Merrill extension, right? Those are probably the biggest things. And maybe there's trades or whatever, but that's going to be on everyone's mind this season. But it's a decent deal, dude. It's a good deal. It's not super risky for the Padres side. It gives Pivetta a chance to come in and kind of not really prove himself, but earn more money by playing on the Padres. So I really think it's a win-win deal. You could say it's not a win deal for Pivetta because he did decline a $21 million qualifying offer, which that's honestly rough. But if you just consider like, okay, he didn't get what he wanted early in the offseason. Later on, it puts him in a spot to make some big money later in the future. But this is now your 4-starter. 5-starter, you got a bunch of guys that are going to be opting for that one. And we'll probably talk about that as spring training goes on and stuff, just because like there's a lot of names in the mix. I think Matt Waldron, maybe that's like the favorite heading into the year just because he pitched a lot last year. I don't honestly know if that's like actually the guy. I think Brian Hoeing is actually maybe the guy that will end up winning that spot just because he's looked pretty good. And obviously they traded for him last year. They like him. And he pitched pretty well for the Padres too. And pretty well for the Marlins as well last year. But Pivetta, that's your biggest move this offseason. Outside, when you start talking about the roster of what's changed, it's really two things. You lost 2 guys. You lost Ha-Seong Kim. We talked about it before. He wasn't coming back. And honestly, I think he's going to do well on the Rays. I think that money wise, I think that's one where you're like on the Padres side, like, dang, you kind of wish you would have been able to keep him. But the reality is like you just weren't going to. Maybe if you traded Arise, maybe if you traded Cronenworth or something like that, but they didn't do that. So because they didn't do that, you're not going to keep Ha-Seong Kim. Profar. I love Profar, bro, but Profar signed for what, 3 years, $45 million? That's not worth it. I'm sorry. Like I'm really sorry. I don't think that's worth it to sign Profar. Profar's only ever been good here for whatever reason. And Profar had a great year. He earned his money. He left. That's fine. I don't really think the Padres are in a spot where it's like the roster's way different. The pitching, I mean, you lost Tanner Scott and you lost him to the Dodgers. That sucks. Like that really does suck. He's an amazing relief pitcher. But you still got Jason Adam, right? Like you still have more Hone coming back to the pen, which is super exciting because he had a really good year last year and you're hoping that he builds on that. But the only difference is like, all right, in left field, you're rocking with Jason Hayward and Connor Joe. That's the platoon there. Connor Joe is really interesting. He can also play first base. He can be a little bit of a platoon guy in the infield as well, or at DH, or however you want to use him. Jason Hayward, not very exciting. I'll be honest. I don't know what you think about this, but I think that Jason Hayward is almost kind of like, I think the goal of signing him is not that he's going to be like the guy. I think he's there for competition and he's almost like your backup plan. What do the Padres want? The Padres want Tirso Ornelas to turn into that platoon guy, right? Or they want Iggy Rosario to turn into the other platoon. Like those are your 2 guys. Like Iggy's always hitting against the lefties. Tirso's always hitting against the righties. And we had talked about that a little bit before, but I don't think it's like it's not risky. And also, say the Padres are just killing it, right? And it comes to the trade deadline. Bro, what are they going to trade for? They're going to trade for an outfielder. You know what I mean? They're going to trade for a DH bat. Like we know that now. So it's not always bad if you don't. And we talked about this. I remember this last offseason, but it was a little bit scary last offseason because it was like, all right, there's all these outfield spots. Profar was coming off a year with the Rockies where he was the worst player in the MLB. He was literally the worst player in the MLB. And they were like, yeah, Jackson Merrill's going to start. And we're like, this is before spring training started. We're like, dude, Jackson Merrill has played in like AA, not put up that good of numbers. If he wins the roster spot, great, which he did, which was lucky. But it was like, you can't just throw him in there and not have like a backup plan. And that didn't end up happening, which was good. But now this year you're looking at it, it's a little bit different. And I saw this right here. Alfredo said this earlier, and I think this is my exact thought. You'd rather see the younger guys do it. Yeah. I also think Connor Joe is a good player, and I'm excited for him. Jason Hayward, he's a good fielder, stuff like that, but he's a platoon guy. So you've got your two platoon guys. They're cheap, right? And you're basically rocking it back. I guess the one spot where you would downgrade is catcher, but I don't know if Kyle Higashioka is going to put up the same season he did last year, right? Like, isn't that kind of the thought process? The catcher market wasn't good. There's a couple guys that are really good, and that's basically it. So I think it's a very similar team, dude. And I feel like that's like the narrative on the Padres has almost turned to like they're not nearly as good as they were last year, but it's like they're practically running back the same squad. There's been rumors about Michael King getting traded. Don't think there's any really truth to that. Cease and Arise, those guys, two guys that I think could get traded, but that's just been talked about. But also at the same time, if you're going to run it back early in the year, you can still trade them. Say the season isn't a success, you can still trade them at the deadline. Maybe for more than what they're at right now, what their value is right now. So why not just run it back, right? And maybe they make a move where they do that and they're like, hey, we're going to get Joe Musgrove back for the playoffs and, whatever happens, right? But overall, I think that the 2025 team is similar to the 2024 team. Obviously, a lot of things can happen throughout the course of a season, but I don't know, dude. I think the moves are kind of fine. Like once you look at it, I think my like actual concern with the Padres is like, what does it look like 5 years from now? That's my actual concern. I'm not like, oh, they're screwed for this year. It's like, no, I know they're going to be good this year. I'm pumped for this year. I'm trying to go to a lot of games. I'm trying to watch every single night. I get more concerned about the way future, where I feel like people almost act like it's like, oh, they didn't sign anyone crazy in free agency. It's like, dude, they're deep into the luxury tax right now. They were never going to do that. That just wasn't a thing. So I don't know, man. I'm pumped. I gotta say, I'm pumped, and I think they're a really good team. Are there some other teams in the league that are better? Yeah, for sure. But in baseball, it fluctuates a lot. So I don't know. I'm pumped though.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely right in the sense that it's almost the exact same, not the exact same team, but it's a very similar team. You look at last year, and a lot of the Padres' success came because guys either bounced back or just popped off, right? The Padres were good because Jurickson Profar had a career year. The Padres were good because Jackson Merrill was much more successful than I think any of us thought. The Padres were good because David Peralta, Donovan Solano, Jackson Merrill, Kyle Higashioka. You can go on and on and on about the guys that helped out the Padres. That's the reason they were good. And coming into 2025, that's essentially what they're doing again. They are relying on guys to have bounce back years. And it's not, I will say, it is not the best formula for success. It's not one that I prefer because it's a gamble. Now, I don't think you're gambling on the right guys this year, but they don't really have much money, and this is the position that they're at right now. So with that being said, yeah, man, I mean, it's essentially the same team. I'd say the downgrades right now, I don't really think there are many. Of course, losing Ha-Seong Kim defensively hurts a lot, but you're kind of hoping that Xander Bogaerts stops being so bad and can hit at least to the level of Ha-Seong Kim. Ideally better, because that's what we signed him for, to be an 800 plus OPS hitter. So you're hoping you get that production out of him. Apparently he's slimmed down. He's trying to get faster so he can be at shortstop. So he can be a good shortstop. But other than that, I mean, Cronenworth's value at second base is much higher than his value at first base. Still got Machado at third. You're hoping. It's kind of weird because for some reason every year the Padres get something good out of a catcher, and it's probably I'm not gonna say it might be. I think it's probably gonna be Elias Diaz that's gonna end up being pretty good this year, because for some reason it keeps happening over and over and over and over. And it's fun, but damn, man, like you definitely can't wait for Ethan Salas to come up and hope that he's some stability at catcher. And of course, you got Fernando out there. Jackson Merrill, two superstars in right and center field, two of the premier outfielders in baseball. Really, right now, your weaknesses are at left and first. And I would argue shortstop, because I don't think Xander Bogaerts is a good shortstop, but you got to put him out there. Um, so really, those are your weaknesses, and those aren't bad weaknesses. There's a ton of left fielders and corner outfielders that are put on the block at the trade deadline. Tons of them, good ones. You're not going to be looking for a guy that's a superstar, in the corners, but those are two very replaceable and easy positions that honestly aren't very valuable. Um, so those are positions that will be filled, whether it's at the trade deadline, before the trade deadline, in free agency, whatever it is. You can live with it for right now. I mean, I think people forget that for a little while we were running Nomar Mazara. Um, what was that guy's name? The shortstop or the second baseman, Alcantara. I think his name was Sergio. I forgot his name. Um,
Was it Alcantara?
yeah, you're running guys that aren't very good. I think people forget that. And they were still a good team, man. The Padres have a winning recipe. They have a good team. Um, the number 5 spot is definitely going to be a battle, and from what I've seen, it's going to be between Randy Vasquez and Matt Waldron primarily. But of course, Brian Helling's going to have a chance. I guess I've heard Stephen Kolek is even going to have a chance. Um, I'm sure Johnny Brito will have it. Actually, I don't know if Brito's hurt. I don't really remember, but I don't think he is. But I'm sure Johnny Brito will have a chance. Um, so that 5th spot is up for grabs, man. Bullpen's still really good. Yeah, you lost Tanner Scott, but Padres always find a way to get guys that will be good in the bullpen. So I'm still excited for the season. Look, I understand how difficult it can be to be excited when your division rival, your main rival, is, oh man, I hate to be that guy, but they're breaking baseball. And it's not their fault. They're doing what any other team would do if they had the chance to do so. It's the Players Association and MLB in general. It's their fault. But so I understand why it can be uninspiring. But I still think it's a good team. Again, you only have to play the Dodgers. You don't have to play them 20 times like you used to have to. Now you only have to play them 10. So
Dude,
I
that's
still
what's
think
crazy about it now.
I know it's so. Honestly, I like playing every team every year. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it because think about it. If you didn't get to play every team every year, us Padre fans would have to go out of our way to watch Bobby Witt, Mike Trout. All these good players that we don't really get to watch because we're in different divisions or different leagues. So I think it adds a lot of fun. But yeah, man, as far as this Padres team go, I still think they're good. I know a lot of people don't because they haven't made any flashy moves. They lost out on Roki Sasaki. It fucking sucks. I get it. It sucks so bad. But I mean, nothing you can do, man. You got to go out there and you still got to compete. I mean, at the end of the day, baseball is that one sport where you can say like the best team not rarely, but the best team doesn't really win all the time. It's not like football. It's not like basketball where you almost know who's going to be there at the end of the day. Um, now I know the Dodgers are really good, and I know it kind of hurts the Padres when they're making all these kind of moves, especially because it seems like every single time someone's on the market, it's between the Padres and the Dodgers. Um, but you got to work with what you got, and you're kind of hoping that the Padres get some bounce backs from some of these guys, and that they contribute to a winning team.
Yeah, dude. I see some other stuff, just some comments over here. Um, Another thing that to kind of factor in is like, okay, let's think about the rest of the NL too, right? Not just our division. I mean, I feel like obviously the Dodgers made some big moves. Giants, they don't. I feel like they never really do anything that matters. I'm sorry, but it really doesn't feel like they do. The Rockies suck. The Diamondbacks like a little bit, but not like enough where you're like, oh, dude, like they're gonna be so much better this year. It doesn't really feel like that. Like is that how you feel about the Diamondbacks at least? Like real quick, like it's kind of similar to last year, right? Where it's like, yeah, it could be a toss up, it could be close. Like
They don't scare me. If I'm being
no,
honest, I don't think the Diamondbacks are. I think they're good. I do think they're good. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they'll be competitors, but I mean, they don't really scare me as much as some people. Some people think they
no.
should.
And I think like you start looking around the league, right? And it's like, okay, well, what about the other teams? All right, let's look at the NL Central first. All right. The Brewers and the Cardinals are not really trying to compete anymore, but the Cubs took a big step up. You know what I mean? Like the Cubs are going to be a lot better. I think that should be the expectation. They should be a lot better. So, but like the Padres are better than every other team in that division. Like, outside the Cubs, and maybe they are better than the Cubs too. But either way, right? The East, I honestly feel like the Phillies have started to take a couple steps back. The Mets are better. The Mets aren't like some crazy powerhouse like they kind of get talked up to be. The Braves are really good, but like none of these teams are like, oh, these teams are just insane. And you have multiple teams that took steps back. So I don't think it's like, I think you look around the NL and it's like, okay, yeah, it's a similar landscape to last year with some teams getting better, some teams kind of staying the same, and some teams dropping off a little bit. But like where the Padres stand, like in terms like you start ranking the rosters and stuff, it's pretty much the same as last year. Also saw this, a couple comments right here. Dude, Machado, Xander, Tatis Jr., Darvish, they're not getting younger. Cease and King will be gone next year. I hope King isn't. Like, I really hope King isn't. But this definitely could be the case. You got to go for it. Where will the Padres have 6 studs like that? 100%, bro. 100%. And I also think they're still primed to swing and to wheel and deal a little bit at the deadline. We always know that for whatever reason, good, fair or not fair, the Padres prospects end up climbing up the leaderboards, and they're always able to move for some guys. Even though people kind of, I mean, sometimes it's like, oh, you're trading too much or whatever, but like you can always find a way to trade some guy that's had a hot year or whatever the case is, to maybe improve a little bit at the deadline. Also saw from Iron Swan, Kimmy was terrible last year at short. That's a fair point, bro. That is a fair point. He had a rough year. He had a rough year. So, and then the other comment I saw right here was, with Manny and Fernando fully healthy at this time, I'm saying this can be an improvement over last year for sure. Hopefully my words don't backfire later in time. So I saw that, and then I saw JDS talk about the depth in 2024. But I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that the Padres, I think it's very similar to start, but let's think about this. Peralta and Solano, were they even in the bigs to start the year? I know Solano wasn't. Was Peralta in the bigs to start the year? Because I don't believe he was. I remember because I was at the Cubs game when Solano had, I think it was 4 hits. I think he went 4 for 5. And that was one of the first games he got called up. I think they're all singles, which is also funny. But those were guys. Kyle Higashioka, people didn't even think he was going to start. It was Campy. Campy was starting at the beginning of the year, right? You had some more infield depth. That's for sure. But Machado was hurt. We didn't even know if Machado was going to start the year healthy. And you look at the pitching injuries, you did trade for Cease. You did trade for Arise like a little bit into the year, right? I mean, Cease like right at the beginning. But like you didn't, it wasn't really like there was, I would argue that maybe there's even more depth this year. You have a couple platoon guys. You don't have much infield depth. You have more in the bullpen because Jeremiah he was a guy that was a borderline roster guy. You didn't have Jason Adam. Robert Suarez was hurt the whole year before. Like, there was not as much in the bullpen. That's for sure. When you're talking about the starters, it was pretty similar. But Matt Waldron was like, he was the 5th guy, and we were talking about with Vasquez and Brito and stuff like that. And even now, it seems like there's more guys when you factor in that, like, dude, last year you didn't have Darvish for almost the whole year, and Musgrove was on and off injury the whole year, and then he eventually it ended, right, because of that, because it was like the entire year he dealt with that stuff. So like I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there was less depth. I would argue that maybe there was even more depth. I guess you could say like, oh, you had a for sure like everyday starting left fielder in Profar. But once again, Profar's coming. He was the worst player. He was the worst player in the MLB in terms of WAR the year before. So it's like, bro, it didn't feel too promising. You also had a rookie center fielder. You also had Tatis that was like just coming back. Like it was not as like, there was a lot of issues. Because I remember at the beginning we were kind of like frustrated. We're like, dude, this is bad. They traded Soto. Like there was so many things that had like blown up. Where like this year, there's a lot more continuity. There's a lot more like, I don't know. I think there's a lot better stuff going on for the Padres just heading into this year, like walking up into it. But I do think that like it's similar at the end of the day. I think it's very similar, but I don't think like last year is way different. Obviously I see some people talking about Sasaki stuff here. We missed a golden opportunity last year, 100%. The Diamondbacks did have a really good offense last year. That's true. I mean, even if the Diamondbacks are better, though, I just don't know how many other teams in like how many other NL teams in the wild card race are like that great.
Yeah.
The NL's not as good. The AL is so much better than the NL. I also think that's something worth noting. Like the AL is like a lot more like solid
Yeah.
teams.
Yeah. Um, you know, I again, I think I think we're this includes me, even though I still think the Padres are a good team. I think a lot of fans are just frustrated because the Padres won 93 games last year, right? Um, that was the best Padres team, I think, maybe of my lifetime, as far as record goes, regular season record. Um, and you were definitely hoping that they would make moves that would benefit them and still keep them around that 93 win range, but also compete with the teams that made the big moves, the Dodgers, the Mets, et cetera, the Diamondbacks. You were hoping to make some moves to where you can compete with them, and I still think the Padres can compete with the Mets and the Diamondbacks. I honestly don't think the Mets are high. I get it. You got Juan Soto, and they have a good lineup, but I don't think they're as good as people think. Um, Nonetheless, they are a good team, and I fully expect them to make the playoffs. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a little disappointing considering that the Padres haven't really made any moves to get us excited to going into the season. As a matter of fact, it's been more discouraging than exciting considering you lost Tanner Scott, you lost Ha-Seong Kim, you lost Jurickson Profar, Kyle Higashioka, guys that were outside of Ha-Seong Kim, guys that were key members to the team last year. No offense to Ha-Seong Kim, I still like him, but um, it's things like that that discourage us. But it's also easy to forget that this is still a good team. Um, I fully expect Manny Machado to be back, and I know that's kind of something that we were saying last year, but for most of the season last year, he was hurt. And when he wasn't hurt, outside of the series against the Dodgers, he was pretty damn good. He had a really, really good end to the season. And this year, I kind of expect that end to the season to carry over into this season. Maybe not the whole year, but I expect him to be a damn good baseball player, to be an all-star level baseball player for the almost the entirety of the year. Um, Same thing with Fernando. I think Fernando is going to be hopefully above a 900 OPS. Um, I mean, there's guys that honestly didn't really play to their full potential last year. Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth. You had down years from guys. Maybe not down because the second straight from Xander that you get a down year. Cronenworth second straight. However, if you get production from those guys again, if you get the production you were hoping to get from Xander, if you get the production you got previously from Jake Cronenworth, if you get consistent production from Manny Machado, you're still looking at a 90-plus win team, a team that can easily get the fifth or fourth spot in the playoff race. Um, and of course, injuries are going to come every year. The Padres dealt with, honestly, more injuries than I can remember. I now remember Yu Darvish being out for a certain amount of time. Joe Musgrove as well. Ha-Seong Kim was out for a lot of the year. Fernando was out for a while. Manny was DHing on and off. I'm pretty sure he had an IL stint. I think Xander had an IL stint. We had a good amount of IL stints, and they were still a damn good team. And there was depth last year. Donovan Solano was good depth. David Peralta ended up being good depth, and that's kind of, again, that's what you're hoping for going into this year. Is you're going to try and get guys who can have bounce back years that can be valuable depth pieces. And it doesn't always work out, but now you're hoping it works out with Connor Joe, Jason Hayward, Yuli Gurriel, et cetera, et cetera. You're hoping it works out with them so that way you can have those depth pieces. So it may not seem right, like right now we have the most depth, but that can very well change by May or June where we're saying, all right, these guys kind of worked out, or these guys worked out enough to be depth pieces. It seems like the past few years outside of 2023 and 21, coincidentally, the years that we didn't make the playoffs, there's been questions surrounding the Padres' depth. There's been questions surrounding the Padres' positions even. Last year it was, what are they going to do in center if Jackson Merrill doesn't work out? Jurickson Profar, what the hell are they doing with Jurickson Profar? He was the worst player in baseball last year. There was questions all around last year. 2022, we went into the season with shit. I think Azokar was starting a few games. Grisham was off a bad 2021. There were still questions in 2022 as well. So, and Jurickson Profar had a really bad year the year before too. There was tons of questioning going into that year as well. But you give it time, they make the moves at the deadline, and they end up becoming a contending team. It's rinse and repeat, and I think that's the way the Padres are trying to go this year. Um, only time will tell. So if they're a competitive team, I don't really think there's much that can go wrong this year. If they're a competitive team, they will make moves at the deadline. If they're not a competitive team at the deadline, they will get rid of guys that will fetch you a good amount of prospects. A rise in seeds can get you something valuable. So win or lose, I think the Padres are in a position where, yeah, guys aren't getting younger. Some things haven't gone their way in terms of ownership, and nothing we can do about it. But you're definitely hoping that we can get some valuable seasons out of guys that are aging, so that way we can get valuable seasons out of the San Diego Padres.
No, it's super true, dude. And also, like, I was looking into like kind of like what the projections and stuff are. So based on the projections, right? The Padres are projected by Fangraphs to go 83-79 and miss the playoffs. Are you ready for it? One game to the Cubs. That's the projections. Actually, wait, maybe it's not the Cubs. Maybe I guess a little bit more. The Cubs are the lowest in the National League, but I guess it would be by 3 games to the Diamondbacks. And 4 games to the Mets and 4 games to the Phillies. So those are like the 3 wild card teams. But It's interesting. So you start looking back into last season, and I was looking at the standings and stuff. Padres finished 93-69, right? 4 games up on the Braves, the Mets, and the Diamondbacks. If you remember, they were all tied right at the end of the year.
Last 2 spots, that's right.
And the Padres were kind of like locked into the playoffs, like as that week started, like as long as they didn't have like an epic collapse, right? Like as like there was a couple weeks left in the year.
Yeah.
But it's funny because they also I don't know. I think last year. Okay, real quick, am I crazy? Last year the Padres played the White Sox right at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, same thing this year, bro. Let's go. Right when you need that sweep at the end of the year, they have it again. Okay, which is fire. But anyways, so they barely make the play, or they don't barely make the playoffs, but they're the ones up, and there's 3 teams right below them. I think the big thing is that this year, I think the Padres, Braves, and Mets are all going to be in the mix. Oh, and the Diamondbacks, right? They barely miss it.
Yeah, it'll be the same thing.
Yeah, the flip this year is like the Brewers won the Central. I think the Cubs will win the Central. Like I feel like that is, if the Cubs don't win the Central, it's an absolute disaster for them. Like absolute disaster, because the Brewers like moved like everything. And then you get some surprise teams. I mean, like Cardinals, Giants. I think they're all outside looking in for sure. Because those are the next 2 teams. I think the Reds and the Pirates are the 2 that it's like, okay, could see it. I could see those teams taking jumps. I could see the young stars starting to really turn into superstars. So I think those are the 2. And I think if those teams are good, if those teams are good, it becomes a lot more fun. But either way, like it should be a competitive race again. So I think that's a very interesting thing, because it feels really similar to last year in terms of just how the teams lay out. I think that the Cubs and the Brewers are like the flip though. But yeah, I wanted to see it. So they are barely projected to miss the playoffs, but it's like same scenario as last year, which is cool. Also, I saw a couple questions here, right here. Do you guys think Hims pops off this year with the Rays? We were already talking about it. I don't think he fit with the Padres, but he's going to be good on the Rays. I think that's the expectation, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a 4-WAR player again. Maybe honestly, if he produces more offensively, which honestly we should probably expect him to, he might even be a 5-WAR player. But I mean, it's not really. I didn't really expect him to do that with the Padres, so I don't really mind moving on from him. It's a lot of. It was a good amount. It was a good chunk of change that they gave him, and honestly, I was super surprised by the team that did it. So they must know something we don't. Because the Rays, I feel like I never see the Rays like signing a guy, even though he's not a star. that was still a good chunk of change to give a player, especially for the Rays.
Yeah,
Um, it was a little bit of a surprise, but yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna be a good player. I know he had a shoulder injury. I don't know how much that's gonna affect his year, but 4 WAR is definitely in the realm of expectations, and that would be a pretty satisfying 15 mil if you got 4 WAR out of him.
yeah, totally. Um, I don't know. I see some other stuff like people talking about the offense, like being a little bit weak offensively. Dude, I don't think it's different than last year. I think that going into last year, and I guess maybe we weren't super like we were really like we were. Everyone was a little bit more concerned last year. Just like where the team's at, like, especially for a regular season. I think playoffs it all kind of goes out the window. It's like, all right, who's going to clutch up? And last year, there's a couple guys that did not clutch up when it mattered most. And then
Absolutely.
Fernando was just the only guy that was going stupid in the playoffs. But like in terms of like regular season stuff, it's like I don't think it's that much different. I really don't. And I feel like we're usually like critical, like we're usually like pretty like not even like pessimistic, but it's like we're like, hey guys, like objectively, this is the problem. I think the problem is like, yeah, it doesn't look that great at catcher, but also last year, like, did it look better? It's like the same.
Oh, it looked worse.
It looked worse when you're heading into the year, and like Higgy had a great year. Yeah, it's true. Also, the year before, Campy looked great, and then his
Mhm.
swing was and his batting stance all that was totally fucked up. And we were like, what the hell is going on with Campy? And then he had a terrible year. Maybe he bounces back, right? Like, but I don't know. You were talking about this earlier. I wanted to. So you were saying that the lineup feels like a lot of guys have to bounce back.
Yep.
Are we just talking about Cronenworth, the catcher position, and Bogarts? Like Bogarts is really just the guy that we're talking about, kind of, right?
Even Machado, because I mean, at the beginning of the year, you weren't getting a lot of production from Manny, so if you can get production from him throughout the whole year, you're looking good.
Didn't he win a Silver Slugger last year?
Dude, he might have, but I just remember going into, I think it was July. Um,
He won a Silver
you know,
Slugger. Sorry, that's just so funny. You know what I
you
mean?
know,
Like when we're talking about a guy.
yeah. I think going into July, he was sitting around a 700 OPS, but he did so damn good throughout the rest of the season that I think he did. He
Yeah.
finish with an 800 OPS.
797. So even then, I think you're right. Like I think he should be a little bit above that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, but that's the thing. Like the bounce back years, like yeah, like Tatis, we should, like hope that he can be better. But like I feel like for having like it's not like these guys had like bad seasons. You know what I mean? Like they still had good years. And I think like Fernando didn't put up the numbers that we know he's capable of, but also like at the same time, it's like yeah, bro, but he was fucking cracked in the playoffs. Like it got insane. So it's like you kind of forgot about it, just because of that. Because everyone's like, oh yeah, this is Fernando. Um, but dude, that's the thing. Is like, yeah, we didn't have the lineup wasn't there, and then they found a lot of complementary pieces as the year went on, lineup wise. This year, the rotation is very similar. When is Musgrove supposed to be back? Is it playoff time?
He's pushing for the playoffs. He's honestly,
He'll be
I don't think
ready.
he's.
If they make the
Yeah,
playoffs, he'll be ready. That's the thing.
I know. The thing is, I don't think he's supposed to be pitching at all this year, but we know. I don't think he's going to miss out on pitching in October. So I expect him to be ready by October for at least bullpen stints.
Yeah, yeah. So, dude, that's the thing where it's like, I think the bullpen's way better.
Oh, dude,
Walker,
bullpen looks better than it did looking into or going into last year.
and you got interesting pieces. Who is it? What Kyle Hart, right? That's the dude's name from the Korean League.
I think so. Yeah.
I know
I
it's
mean,
Hart his last name. I think his first name's Kyle. He's
even,
a very intriguing piece.
yeah, even just excluding him, Morejon's good, Estrada's good, Suarez, fuck. Hopefully he's good. Um, Hoeing is good. You got good players, man.
Yeah,
Matsui hopefully is better this year. It's a good bullpen. It's a solid bullpen. Um, Again, man, I really think we're only a bat or two away or a starting pitcher away from that Fangraphs projection going into the wild card.
yeah. And also, when I was talking about the fifth spot, we can get a little bit, not like full on, because I feel like as spring training goes on, it's like, all right, this is our guy. We'll definitely, dude, we'll definitely do a video because I feel like we did that last year. And we are like, Matt Waldron, what? You remember doing
Oh
that,
yeah,
right? And then he was balling
so,
out. We're like, me and you,
yeah,
we're like off air. We're like, don't think it's gonna
yeah,
last. Don't think it's gonna last.
yeah.
Sorry, guys. Don't. And everyone's like, dude, you guys were wrong. You guys are
It went for a
morons.
while. It
And
lasted
for
for
a while, he provided value and knuckleball was fun. All right? No hate, but it did take its time.
yeah.
I think Vasquez, well, I think Brito was the guy that we kind of thought was going to win it, but you were talking about Vasquez last year and like, dude, I kind of like Vasquez. Like, I know he's not like pitching well and stuff, but it's like you can see some potential there. So I think it's interesting. I also think a year with Ruben Niebla, another offseason with Ruben Niebla, and now you have your second year with Ruben Niebla. I think that can make a big difference too. Like the Ruben Niebla effect is absolutely real. So
So, I mean,
you can have
bro,
two guys emerge. That's the other thing
yeah.
too.
I mean, really, if you look down the rotation, you're probably going to get around a low three, mid three ERA from Darvish. Same thing from Cease. King, you're probably going to get around a 3 or a high 2. Pavetta, you're hoping to get a 3.5. If you're getting a 4 or a high 3s or low 4s from Randy Vasquez or Matt Waldron, you have a pretty damn good rotation. Um,
Dude,
yeah,
you don't just have a pretty damn good rotation. You have one of the best rotations in the sport.
yeah, exactly.
Like seriously, and the bullpen is good. Like that's why I don't. That's why I don't like. My concern with the Padres is not for 2025. Like I think they're going to be good. I mean, maybe it doesn't work out. That would really suck. My concern is like, bro, after this year, is it going to fall apart?
The
That's
future is murky.
my honest thought.
The future is murky.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I remember last year, like when they traded for Cease and Arise, we were talking about it. We're like, oh, and King, they had this Soto trade. It was like, oh, so they have a 2-year window with the same team, like almost the exact same team, like the same core, everything. And now you're on two of that, and you completely choked your one away when you were sitting right there. So it's like, all right, you get another shot. You get another shot, and this year, the difference this year is that you're coming in super healthy and everything. But it's like I mean, it's just like, all right, you got to do it, bro. Like you got to win it. Like you got to. So there's a lot of pressure too. I think that's the other thing. But it is exciting. Okay, I have found one more question here I want to talk about, and we'll probably take off a second. We've been talking a while. Also, as we're kind of wrapping it up and stuff, guys, let us know what other stuff you want to talk about, videos and shit like you want us to do there. But I do think this is interesting. We talked about Suarez real quick. This is earlier in the stream. This is the question, bro, because this is the question that makes me go, do I want Robert Suarez on the Padres? Do I want them to trade Robert Suarez? Do I want someone else closing? He
If I'm
has
being
to.
if I'm being completely honest, I don't want Robert Suarez on the Padres.
It's too scary, right?
It's man, if he can get his changeup back, yes, it's fine. I'll feel okay. Just his changeup. I'm not asking for much. You got a damn good fastball, but get your changeup back, and you can be either the setup man or the closer. But if you're just a one-trick pony, I don't want you on the Padres. It's really simple, man. There's other options that can close out games, and it's hard to trust someone that. It's also hard when you realize that he had a damn good changeup before this year.
Yeah.
In 2022, his changeup was really, really good. It was a great pitch, and I don't know what happened to it. I don't know why he's not throwing it as often. I'll look into it, but it genuinely, like, it's scary the amount of fastballs he throws, because everyone ended up catching on to it.
For what? I go to 22. It was just average, but that's fine, bro, because you're still gonna, you're still getting a lot out of him.
Yeah.
23. Look at that. It was the most valuable pitch he had, which he didn't pitch. They only had 26 games, so it wasn't as much.
Yeah.
And it also it wasn't like Suarez was like bad, but it was just like it fell off a lot as like the year went on. That was it felt like he got figured out. That was the thing. So it's like, what do you mean? You guys are showing these numbers and like he looks fine, whatever. Here we go. Look. This is perfect. The numbers back it up. August and 11 starts. So all year he has a sub-3 ERA. Look at April, 0, right? In 10 starts. Under a 1 in 12 outings in May. 2, back-to-back 2 with 9 outings. Then in August, he has a 4 ERA and 11 outings. And September, this is where it was like, oh my God. Oh God, this is terrible.
It got so scary.
6 ERA when it started to matter most. And I mean, everyone remembers, like, you started feeling like, oh my God, he's gonna blow every single game.
Yep.
They had the triple play, right? That was he was out there, wasn't he?
Oh, play that wouldn't have ended well if it wasn't for the triple play.
Yeah. So there was so much of that where it was like, oh God, like this is getting scary. So that is, I think, it's probably like his whole off season too. Like that's my expectation for him. Yeah, I do wonder what I do wonder what, like, what you could trade him for. I don't know. It's kind of hard. I think that maybe they'll make one trade, but like either way, it's pretty early on to start seeing what's going on. I see early trade deadline predictions. I have one that's fun. I have one idea, and we don't have to get into it that much, but I think this is a fun video. Maybe we'll make it one time just because I think it's a good one. Obviously, Nolan Arenado has been talked about getting traded for a ton. I want to eventually talk about this because I think that it's interesting. Who says no? And we could do quick. We could do like a 1 minute one right here. Who says no to it? I think it's the Padres. I'll tell you right now. But who says no to a Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado swap? Because we know that Manny Machado's contract's getting a little scary in a couple of years. Like seriously, like. But also, like, the Padres they can't trade him. That's the thing. It's so purely hypothetical. But it's like, yeah, it's fun to talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean,
If you're the Cardinals, you have to say yes to that, right? If you're the Cardinals, maybe not.
Yes. Now those two, it's fun and it's funny because those two are going to be connected to each other.
Yeah,
the rest
exactly.
of their life. They're always going to be talked about. Who was better? That's going to be when you think of Manny Machado, you're always going to think, who was better, Nolan Arenado or Manny Machado? Same thing for Nolan. I'll take Manny. That's just me. But I know a lot of people would take Nolan.
Yeah. Well, also, I know that it's a Padres chat. I already see like 4 comments that are like, no way. No.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting. Just because, like I'm telling you guys, like, the Machado contract gets scary, bro. It really does. But either way, like, the Padres have already decided, like, Machado's their guy. So it would be so insanely deflating to the fan base and, like, to what they're trying to build. If they were to trade Machado, something would, like, have to happen, you know what I mean, for that to go down. And it's just not going to happen. That's also why I think it's funny. It's like when we could talk about, like, yeah, guys, so just in, like, there's a 0.00% chance this ever goes down. But it's a fun one because, everyone likes to talk about them and compare them and stuff. But I don't know. In terms of, like, trade deadline, bro, like, it's way too hard to tell. Because that's the thing. It's like, who's going to be good? You don't even know. There's always surprise teams that are pretty decent. And the buyers and sellers change. And some teams last year, like the Giants, remember this? They didn't sell. And we were like,
oh, they were weird.
Out of your mind. You're absolutely out of your mind. So, but
yeah, there's teams that end up going from sellers before the trade deadline to they end up being buyers and vice versa. So yeah, we don't know yet.
Or you could be like the Tigers, sell and then become like the hottest team in the league. Exactly. That was crazy. That was crazy last year.
That was so much fun. You never know what can happen, man.
Yeah. All right, dude. What else we got? I feel like that's kind of, in terms of what we want to talk about today, it's kind of, I feel like that's kind of it. We're kind of catching up and just seeing. I don't know what our schedule is going to look like and stuff. Dude, nowadays it's tough to find the right time. We got to like pick a day out or something, but we were trying to schedule this one for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, right now I have nothing else to talk about. I'm sure here as close as we come to the season, they'll give us more and more to talk about. But
oh yeah,
it's tough, and it's not only that we've been busy and it's hard to get our schedules together, but it's hard to want to talk about Jason Hayward and Connor Joe, et cetera, et cetera. But
Pavetta was cool. Pavetta was cool.
Yeah, Pavetta was a good one. Yes, that was honestly what made me want to talk to you guys again. Is Nick Pavetta.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's fun, and I still think it'll be a fun season. But we'll see how it goes.
Oh, one other thing we had was Luka being a Laker. That is the most insane trade I've ever seen in my entire life. 100%. Most insane random trade ever.
Yeah, in all of sports, honestly, that was the most like jaw-dropping, what the hell just happens trade in damn, maybe my life. I remember the
right?
Chris Paul when the Lakers almost got Chris Paul. That was kind of crazy, but
But this was way crazier in terms of like,
way
why did
crazier.
this happen?
I didn't
No
expect
reason.
it.
No
I
reason.
didn't know he was on the market. I don't think anyone knew he was on the market.
Well, the craziest part was that the Mavs GM was like, yeah, we didn't offer trades to anyone else but the Lakers. One, that makes zero sense. That makes
Yeah,
absolutely zero sense. Two, why would you ever, ever, ever publicly say that? Right? That's the more
yeah,
crazy part of that. Like, what?
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. That's legitimately the most insane trade I've ever seen. And I
Yeah,
didn't see it until the next morning, and my phone had been dead all night. I, like, went out and had a good time or whatever. My phone was dead all night. I was at work the next morning, and one of my buddies like, "Bro, you seen that trade?" I was like, "What trade?" He's like, "Luka to the Lakers." I was like, "What do you mean? What happened?" He's like, They traded Anthony Davis and a first for Luka." I'm like, "Dude, you're screwing me." No, they didn't. He's like, "I swear to God." He goes, "I swear to God, this is what actually happened." I was like, they traded Anthony Davis and a first. And then I found out that it was like a first for like a couple years later. I was like, what
yeah,
in
dude.
the
It's
world?
46. I'm exaggerating, but that's how basketball
Damn
trades
near,
are.
bro. Yeah, damn near.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. I mean, again, I didn't expect it. It was super cool. I was a Laker fan for a while. Don't really care much about him anymore, but I do really like Luca. Not that I'm gonna declare myself a fan again. That'd be kind of fake, but um, I love LeBron. I love Luca, but yeah, it was certainly shocking. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing with basketball is, I'm pretty sure the All Star Weekend just passed. I didn't even know.
Dude,
So
I don't get, dude, this is the boring time of sports. I'm
it
happy
is.
baseball's starting. When it's really fun when baseball's starting up or about to start up, and like when March Madness hits, it's like, all right, sports are back. But you have like this like 2 month period or like this like post NFL playoff to
Yeah,
March Madness. That's like this is the dry time of sports.
dude.
So boring.
If basketball wasn't such a bad product nowadays, it wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, you seen that basketball's down like 40% in ratings this year.
Basketball fans refuse to believe that it's not a good product anymore. It is not a good product.
It's not. No, it's not fun to watch. March Madness is
No,
fun to watch. Why? Because they have guys in the post.
exactly.
That's the difference. That's why.
Yeah,
But no, NBA is not fun to watch. Like I watch playoffs just because like it's cool and stuff, but I don't like get into it really as much as I used to either. Which
yeah.
sucks because I always loved watching basketball growing up.
Me too. I loved watching. Especially the guys that we grew up with: Melo, KD, Steph, Kobe, LeBron, D
Yeah,
Wade. All these guys that they were good in the paint, outside of the paint, whatever it was. They were just good. Now it's just guys fucking hailing threes and shooting free throws, and it's just
yeah.
not fun.
No, it's not, dude. This is like our like old head takes right here, but I feel like
It
it's. I
is.
feel like,
No, it really is. It's unfortunate, but
but even
I'm an
like,
honest.
is it? I think it's just kind of like across the board. I feel like that's how people feel.
Should be how people feel. It's not a fun product anymore.
Yeah. I wonder if it changed. I don't know if it will, but I hope so, man. I would like to be into basketball again.
Me
Um,
too. I would love to watch again.
but yeah. All right, guys. I think that's gonna do it. Went for like an hour. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm honestly really really pumped for this season. I've been looking into like going to like wherever city to watch the Padres play and like seeing like when they're gonna be around and stuff. So I'm pretty pumped. But all right, guys. I think I'll probably do it. Thank you all for listening. We'll hopefully be back soon, man. Hopefully we'll be back soon now the thing is now there's things going on. This was like a nothing off season until like a week ago. So like yeah, we didn't really go live, but dude, what were we about to talk about? Like what were we gonna talk
I
about?
had
Like,
no clue what to talk to you guys about. So
well, we could talk about this and this. And it's like, yeah, but I don't even like believe some like I don't believe these trade rumors, you know?
nope.
Cease
Yeah,
maybe. The
exactly.
Cease is the one. And I know there's Red Sox rumors with him now, but like we'll see. If it heats up, we'll make a vid, all right? If it heats up, we'll make a vid because that's a fun one to talk about. But
Yeah.
I think it's gonna do it. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.